unlike on the grammar questions in the writing test, there's not going to be a lot of rules that you can learn that are applicable to specific questions, right? On the grammar section, we learned about fragments, we learned about subject-verb agreement, we learned about tense. And presumably, if you know those rules, you can answer questions with those rules and it wouldn't be too difficult as long as you are comfortable with with those concepts. With the rhetorical skills, every question is going to be, there'll be commonalities between questions, right? There's going to be deleting questions and addition questions and so on. But it's not like if I give you one rule, you can use that one rule to answer any adding sentences question, no matter what it says, because it's going to depend on a lot of factors. It's going to depend on what the sentence says, what the paragraph is about, what the passage is about, where that sentence is being placed, what's going on in the sentences around it. There's just too many factors that go into it. So I can't really give you a specific formula for each question. But what I can do is give you 4 principles that you can use to help you answer rhetorical skills questions. When you are working through the choices and eliminating, you can use these rules to help you eliminate. When you're down to maybe 2 choices that you think are both okay, you can use these rules or these principles to help you make that final selection. These are guiding principles you can use on really any rhetorical skills question to help you eliminate choices and get closer to the answer. So let's work through these 4 principles. So the first principle is that you have to make sure your added sentence, your new detail, your revision, whatever, is on topic. The SAT is very strict about this. If the sentence is off topic, it doesn't fit what's going on in that paragraph in a strict way, it should not be included, or it should be changed or deleted or whatever. So even if it's like somewhat on topic, right, it's kind of a side note or it's tangential to the argument, but somehow related, if it isn't close and tight with what's going on in that paragraph specifically as a function of the passage as a whole, it's not something you're going to want to add. So be very rigorous and strict with the topic of the paragraph and whether your addition or your change or whatever fits with that topic. Second thing to look for is you want to pay attention to the flow of sentences within a paragraph. So when you add a sentence or change the opening word or other tasks that you might have to do on these questions, make sure that you don't break the flow from sentence to sentence. So you're never going to want to read these sentences that you're revising or changing. You're never going to read them in a vacuum because you have to pay attention to the context, what's going on in the paragraph. For example, if this paragraph is showing some sort of contrast or transition from one point to the next, showing one argument and the counter argument, for example. You want to make sure that your change reflects that structure, right? Reflects that flow. So you might want to, for example, pick the choice that contains the word however, because that would show that transition or that flow of contrast, right? One point contrasting with the following point. So you want to, when you're doing these questions, read at the very least the sentence before it and the sentence after the particular portion of the text you're looking at to make sure you are transitioning, that you're flowing from one sentence to the next in a logical way. And again, that's a general rule. We will see how this applies to specific examples. Next, focus on what the question specifically requests in its answer. So if the question says something like, which of the following choices best explains Adam's motivation for buying the car, your answer has to do exactly this. A lot of times when we're doing, say, writing questions, really math or reading in many ways as well, we read the question rather quickly, we slot it within a category, right? And then we approach the question thinking in terms of that category. And that's good, right? I obviously encourage that. I have videos about question types. But particularly for the writing section, we have to make sure we don't overlook the specific details of that question, right? In this case, if they wanted to know Adam's motivation for buying the car, your choice better do that. No more, no less. So one of the things you can do if you're stuck between, say, 2 choices, you're not sure, they both seem pretty good, what you can do is go back to the question, reread it, make sure you're not missing any specific details or specific things the question wants, because that's often going to be the differentiator between the right answer and the wrong answer. And then finally, we've discussed this before in the intro videos and in the grammar videos, pick the clear and concise choice. Again, this is true of all questions, grammar, rhetorical. You want to avoid wordy and redundant choices, as we've discussed. But then in terms of how this sentence communicates an idea, you want to make sure that it communicates an idea that's specific, that's relevant, that's harmonious with the paragraph's flow, and is effective given what the goal of the paragraph or passage is. So what matters is not just because, for example, you could pick a sentence that is really short and concise, but in doing those cuts, you might cut out information that's relevant and important and necessary, right? So just you want to balance the competing demands of saying something relevant and adding necessary information to the passage, but at the same time not being wordy or redundant or adding information that's off topic. So that's the fourth principle that you would use to work through these choices. And again, you want to use these principles have to kind of be balanced against other demands. And it's all going to depend on the particular questions and the particular passages. And that's what we're going to look at when we go through a bunch of practice examples. So let's move on to the first specific question type that we're going to look at.